Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting. I'm Ryan Dorsey, Chair of the committee. I represent the 3rd City Council District here in Baltimore City. Today, we have 4 items on our agenda. We have 2 bill hearings, and after we conclude the hearings on those 2 bills, we're going to go into a voting session for committee members. We're going to vote 3 bills today. And I'll explain as we go. We are going to begin today with 250040, zoning uses retail small box establishment. But before we begin, I'm going to acknowledge folks who are here. To my left, we have Councilmember Zach Blanchard from the 11th District. We have, standing at the podium, already ready, waiting to present her bill, Vice President of the City Council and Vice Chair of the Committee, Councilmember Sharon Green Middleton from the 6th City Council District. To my far right, we have Councilman Mark Parker from the 1st District. Then we have, to his left, we have Councilmember Paris Gray from the 8th District. To his left, we have Councilwoman Felicia Porter from the 10th District. To my immediate right, we have our wonderful staff committee member, Mr. Tony Leva. How are you doing this morning, Tony?
I'm doing well, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
I always feel like I'm like David Letterman or somebody like asking, like a talk show host, like saying hi to the band leader or somebody. How are you doing this week? We also have representatives. We also have Councilwoman Odette Ramos, co-lead sponsor, shall I say, of the first bill that we're going to hear today. And we have various members of representatives of city agencies, the mayor's office, and a number of members of the public here. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us, as well as some staff from our city council offices. How you guys doing? All right. Charm TV got us going live on the screens and online. And so here we are, going to begin with Council Bill 250040, zoning uses retail small box establishment. We will have a presentation of the bill from the sponsors of the bill. Then we will have committee questions for the sponsors. And then we will have agency reports and committee questions for the agency representatives. And then we will go to public testimony in person. And then public testimony from anybody who has signed up online. About this real quick, if you are here in person and you want to testify on either of the 2 bills that we are hearing today, 250040 or 250062, there are paper sign-up sheets in the back of the room. If you want to testify on either of these bills, you need to sign up on the one or both of those forms and make sure that you check the box that says, I want to testify, not just I have a position. Check that box that says that you want to testify. We still have more of these sheets in the back. Yeah, okay, great. And if you are online, there will be a link in the chat to a form to fill out, to sign up, to testify online. So please fill out that form and we will call people from that sheet. With all of that out of the way, Madam Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Dorsey, and good morning, colleagues and members of the Land Use Committee and everyone in council chambers. I'm here representing the 6th District and also a co-sponsor of Bill number 250040, zoning uses retail small box establishment. I first want to say that, last year, this is a bill last year that we tried, Councilwoman Ramos and I tried to get through, and it failed. So this is a clear example. If something fails the first time, you can go back and see what needs to happen to really get a bill passed that you really feel sincere about and you think it would be helpful for the city. So I have partnered with my colleague, again, on this bill, Councilwoman Ramos of the 14th District, to address the rising number of small box stores, particularly dollar stores in certain areas. Many have noticed that these stores often cluster in the same neighborhoods, creating saturation that limits shopping variety for residents. This concentration not only reduces consumer choices, but also impacts the economic landscape, making it difficult for independent grocers and specialty shops to succeed. It is important to note that this bill does not target the following: grocery stores, stores with pharmacies, or primarily selling hygiene products, fuel stations, and thrift stores. This legislation aims to establish specific use standards for new small box discount stores to ensure they meet community needs and zoning requirements. Community concerns have been growing regarding the effect of these stores on local businesses and access to essential goods. While these stores provide affordable options, their concentration can harm local businesses by drawing customers away. Additionally, the clustering of dollar stores may contribute to food deserts, limiting access to fresh produce and healthier foods, which can worsen health disparities. Our goal is to create a balanced retail environment where small businesses can thrive alongside larger chains, offering a variety of products that meet diverse needs and preferences. We are confident that with the right policies, we can build a more equitable and inclusive community that supports economic growth and the well-being of its residents. Finally, I want this bill to clearly define key terms related to small box establishments for clarity and effective regulation. With your support, we believe this legislation can lead to a more resilient and inclusive neighborhoods. Thank you for your consideration, and I also want to thank that has been working on this bill with us, as I said, since last term. Johns Hopkins played a big role. The planning department also played a big role. Thank you for that. And we can't thank legislative reference and the law department going back and forth with amendments. This was clearly collaboration between the mayor's office, administration, and the council sponsors. And I think we cleared all the bumps in the road. And I'd like my colleague, Councilwoman Ramos, to come up because she's going to also talk about the amendments, and just really appreciate the partnership that we did with this bill. I'm telling you, it was just, it took a lot. It took patience and working back and forth, and I think it is a good start to just try to work with what the challenge that we have here with these stores.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos, good morning.
Good morning. I don't see my stoop by my desk, so I'm on my tiptoes. Is that it right there? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Councilwoman Odette Ramos from the 14th District. I'm honored to be able to work with Council Vice President on this bill. Yes, I'm going to take advantage of my stoop.
I love it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right.
The Barbara Mikulski special.
Oh, so much better. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good morning. I'm, again, Councilwoman Ramos from the 14th District. Honored to be working with Council Vice President on this bill. I want to thank her for her leadership and also thank all the folks that we've been working with throughout the city, as well as the Law Department and Mr. Chair for helping us through to get us where we are today. And Madam Vice President really gave the background of what we are trying to do here. So what I just want to concentrate on is the amendments before you, and you should have them in your packet. So the first, you'll also note that the Law Department has amendments, and we have incorporated the Law Department amendments for the most part. in this. So I'll go through all of that. So amendment number 1 is suggested by law, and it actually places the small box establishment category, just like we would establish the retail, big box category and other categories that are currently in the zoning code, in the building code, so that if somebody is going to establish a small box store, they still have to get a use permit for that. So they have to go through the permitting, they have to go through all the inspections, et cetera. The second amendment, also suggested by law, changes the original definition of small box stores. Our original definition was basically the dollar stores, looking at Dollar General, not saying the name, but it was that they were certain square footage, that they sell discount goods, and that they were part of a chain of 10 stores in the city. The law department said, let's not do it that way. Let's do all of the small box stores, even if they're family owned, if they're small. And that's because otherwise it would seem like it's discriminatory, that we're only treating dollar stores differently. And that's not great, but at the same time, we can live with it. So let's say if Herman's in my district, which they're not going anywhere, they own that building, they're not going anywhere. But if they wanted to add another store somewhere else, we would still have to go through this process that we're going to describe in the bill. The third amendment is that law clarified the definition of grocery store, so grocery stores are exempt. And then the fourth amendment removes language about the conditional use. So what our bill does is it says for this category of small box, which we define, we are making it a conditional use in all C zoning districts, C1 through C5 and all the other Cs, okay? And that means that they have to go to the board, to the zoning board, to be able to get approval to be in that zoning district, which means, for the most part, they have to come to the community for a conversation about being in the neighborhood. So initially, we wanted, if the use is approved and they leave, so for instance, the dollar store has just left 32nd and Greenmount, that the conditional use would go away immediately, or 30 days. And the law department says, nope, can't do that. Every other use that has a conditional use has a 2-year wait. So that is so that another store could go right in as well. And so rather than, we took that part out. So it's still going to be the 2-year wait. And that's so that these small box wouldn't be treated differently than any other use. And so we were able to get the approval from the law department on the amendments in the bill, the way that we have presented it to you all. So I'm happy to take any questions. And I do think that it's going to be, even with taking out the conditional use discontinuance piece so that you still have to wait, it's going to be tough to locate any new small box stores and dollar stores here. So I think that that's something that at least the community will be involved in the conversation because they have to go to the board to get approval. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to yield, but also take any questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ramos, and thank you, Vice Chair Middleton, for bringing this bill. I love this bill, actually. In my very first term, I introduced a bill to ban new gas stations. And part of that was understanding that new gas stations with like a tiny little like transactional retail space don't really exist anymore. The only kind of gas stations that do get built these days are ones with huge convenience stores that I think are not dissimilar from the way that small box dollar stores adversely impact neighborhoods' likelihood of attracting grocery stores and things that are more beneficial and more community oriented. And so I'm very familiar with this research and the implications. And so very thankful to have you bringing this bill today. Thank you. Do we have questions from committee members? Yes, Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much. I want to go back, Councilwoman, I want to go back to a conversation, and I know you and I have talked about that conditional use. How do we ensure that the establishment actually follows the conditional use? One of the major issues that we're having in community, not just with these small box retailers, but with other establishments as well, they are not necessarily following the conditional use, and the community bears the brunt of them not following the conditional use, and the lack of oversight ensures that, it's longer and longer for these issues to be presented and demonstrated in community. How can we fully ensure that the conditional use, if any new retailer comes in, how can we ensure that they indeed do follow the conditional use?
Thank you for that great question. So the conditional use itself is just to have the establishment. But I think my understanding of what your question is that when the store comes to the community to say that they want to establish there, that there can be an agreement made, an MOU, saying, you've got to pick up the trash, you've got to close at certain hours, you've got to, all of those things. So that is our hope, that they would have that dialogue, and that then the community would agree, and then there would be, and they may not agree, but that if there is an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, that then that gets attached to the conditional use. Mm-hmm. And then if those things that are in there continue to be violated, the board would be informed and revoke the conditional use. There was not a lot of backbone to that a long time ago, but this board and moving forward has been pretty clear that, we want to establish these things and we will hold them accountable. So it is going to take some diligence from the community in terms of 311s and measuring that there's been some challenges. Again, I'll just use the dollar store on 32nd and Greenmount, where they never even had a dumpster. Mm-hmm. So it was a nightmare. And we could, so if we had that kind of situation, we could say to the board, hey, they're continuing to violate this MOU, and so we need you to revoke the conditional use, which means then they would have to close.
Yeah, and so I completely understand that, and thank you for that clarification. My only concern is that some of those issues demonstrate for 2 years, 3 years, and in some instances up to 5 years. And so the community is exhausted. And so when we are talking about any type of enforcement oversight, I'm not confident that if we simply rely on the makeup of the board to ensure that the conditional use is enforced or not, we should be utilizing levers in our toolbox, such as laws, to ensure that regardless of what the board makeup is, we are still consistently maintaining the quality of life for those areas. My second question actually
Can I just add one thing to that real quick? So Senator Washington had introduced a bill at the state level about this issue, defining what the small box was, but also saying, and this was all in May, so we didn't exactly follow it, but what she wanted to do was to have community benefit agreements that were like the, community law center and others could enforce. Our law department said we cannot do that. And so we ended up, that was one of the issues with last term's bill. And so we ended up taking it out. And so we're hopeful that, and I absolutely hear your issue because we see it. But our hope is that with this dialogue and that there is an MOU, that then the board would revoke it. I've seen it happen once in my district, so I want to make sure that it's consistent put in, and we can maybe think about other ways that we can put in the statute that MOUs are
contractually binding.
Yeah, and so, but right now the tool that we have is to really work with the board.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And my second question has to deal with the 2-year mark.
Before that question, I just like to add that.
Vice Chair Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just like to add, we definitely understand what you're trying to say, and those were we were in this bill full blast, and we have to be careful so that we're being kind to all businesses, and we don't want to be sued by a business for something small. So I look at this as ways that we compromise to at least get something started. Mainly, the distance was one of our priorities. And, you know, that is what we tried to focus on, at least to get something started. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we actually didn't mention that earlier. We have in the bill, we have a distance requirement.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
the dollar stores or small box can't be within half a mile of each other. Because
Sure.
I know you have two right next to each other.
I had
and,
really
yeah.
4 in one, all within a block, Liberty Heights and Garrison. And I think that might have been half of the reason of the big chain of Walgreens. Here we had the dollar store in the front of it, Family Dollar behind it, and then a privately owned another convenience store, right, all within that one block radius, which was terrible when other things could have come there. So definitely understand where you're coming from, but we have to do this in pieces to at least get something started. And I think this bill has also created the dollar stores to start to have dialogue with that area, all those 5 neighborhoods. And I think someone's going to testify too about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And there was also mention, and I just want to make sure that I have clarification. You mentioned if a small box retailer comes out of a location and they have a conditional use, the new operator, do they have to engage with the community under the current MOU, or do they not have to engage with
Yeah,
the current MOU?
We really tried here, okay? We really tried to say that, we'll use 30-second and Greenmount again as an example. If they had a conditional use for a small box there, they leave, which they have left. Our original goal here was so that use would go away completely. And so if another dollar store was gonna move in, they'd still have to come and do the conditional use and go through the process again, okay? The law department is saying to us, we cannot do that unless we do it for, the law department is saying we can't do that because it discriminates on just these uses. So it's something to think about in terms of conditional use writ large.
Sure. And so this last question is for the law department. If an MOU is, I'm assuming, and this is under the assumption that an MOU is somewhat binding, if it's written out to a certain legal entity, why are we not considering a new MOU or a new entity once a new operator comes in, because they would have to sign that MOU?
Can we hang on to that till we do agency reports?
Sure.
Great, we'll do that.
I very much appreciate this line of questioning. Thank you.
Are there other committee member questions for the bill sponsors? Okay, great. Thank you. Now we will go to agency reports, and we will start with the law department.
Thanks, Chair Dorsey and members of the committee. Jeff Hochsteller with the Law Department. As explained further in our report, there were some initial concerns with the wording of the current bill, but with the suggested amendments that Councilwoman Ramos explained well, we can approve for form and legal sufficiency. Councilwoman Porter, to your question, if a conditional use when it's been approved, it comes with the conditions that have been placed on that use. So it's my understanding that even if ownership changes, those uses would, the conditions on that use would still, need to be in effect and enforced. And obviously that's in addition to any of the code enforcement problems that it sounds like you were referencing.
Even if the legal entity has
Earlier.
changed?
Right, it's a condition on the use itself.
It's a condition on the use.
Yeah, not on the owner. Not the
Yeah, but
ownership.
I'm talking about specifically the MOU. So if the legal entity is signing the MOU, I'm not talking about the use for the property. I'm talking about the MOU. If a legal entity is signing that MOU, then why does the MOU follow the conditional use. It's a different legal entity that's signing that document associated with that conditional use.
Do you have in mind sort of side MOUs apart from the conditional use approval?
So for example, and Mr. Chair, can I just have a moment of indulgence to explain?
Sure, if I just
Yeah.
could. There are two different ways of making an agreement at the point of a use permission or something like this. One would be like a completely separate independent MOU between an entity, say a community organization, and a corporate entity. And I have personally seen how that plays out poorly for community members who then would have to hire an attorney in order to represent them when the corporate entity fails to uphold their side of the agreement. But when the zoning board approves a conditional use, there can be enshrined in the approval of that permit a legally, municipally enforceable set of conditions associated with that. And that is not unique to the applicant. That, because the land use permit and anything associated with it goes to the property.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Okay.
I think we're talking, no, I know we're talking about two different things. So I'm not talking about the conditions that are associated with the zoning. I'm talking about any type of MOU, additional MOU that will be signed by the community with this applicant that is connected to this zoning, that is connected to the use.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I think that would depend on sort of the wording of the MOU, if it, and whether or not it would bind any successor. I think for the zoning purposes and for conditional use approval, sort of getting the conditions as part of the use itself that are, would be important at the outset, because there could be some, we wouldn't necessarily be able to advise on what a side agreement between the owner and community association might be able to say.
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you. Just to clarify, what has happened in some of the cases in my district is that the agreement actually becomes filed as part of the conditional use. So in the resolution that comes out from the BMZA, it actually says Ann has to follow X and such and Y and such. So that becomes a condition that is enforceable by the conditional use approval.
Planning Commission. Oh wait, was there anything further from the law department? We've got the amendments. You've reviewed the amendments. They're good. Form and legal sufficiency.
Form and legal
approved.
sufficiency, appreciate the cooperation with the sponsors and DLR, so
Great.
all approved.
Planning Commission.
Brandon Canoy from the Planning Department.
Oh, it's on. It's on. Yeah, just pull it a little closer.
Let me just get a little closer. Brandon Canoy with the Planning Department on behalf of the department. We are recommending approval, and we stand by our report. And just to clarify the Planning Commission's recommendation, when it was presented to the committee, the amendments to the building code were not presented, so the numbering is a little off, but the intent of the Planning Commission's resolution was to adopt the amendments which deal with the definitions and better defining certain parts of the small box store and other things like that, and then did not recommend the amendment which would remove the distance and spacing standard.
Great. Thank you.
And Chair Dorsey, if I may, the initial in the law department report, it was an inadvertent deletion of the line about the distance requirement, and many apologies for that. So that was a typo. That was never the intent of the law department amendments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it was also my understanding that the Planning Commission rejected the last part of the third amendment, which was to remove the conditional use. They wanted to keep the abandonment and discontinuance in the bill that we had.
Correct. That was the Planning Commission recommendation.
Right. Understand. Finance. Tyler, you're here for them?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Tyler Schnell, Mayor's Office. The Department of Finance stands behind their report.
Thank you. Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We respectfully stand behind our favorable bill report.
Great, thank you. The bill was not referred to BDC, but we did get a BDC report. I'll allow you to report as long as it's favorable.
Thank
Just
you, Mr.
kidding.
Chair and members of the committee. Tom Welly, on behalf of the BDC, our report is indeed favorable and we stand by it.
I'm joking, but I am a biased chairperson. Thank you. Any questions, any other questions from committee? We've been joined by Councilman Bullock from the 9th District. Thanks for being here.
And a member of the Planning Commission.
Who do we have from the Planning Commission? Oh, yeah, yes, sorry, one and the same. Do we have any questions for agencies from the committee? Okay, great. We will go to public testimony at this time. Again, if you want to testify on this bill, we ask that you sign the form that was in the back that Tony just collected. And if you are online, there is a link in the chat to the form to sign up to testify. Please go to that link and fill in that form, and we will call names from there at the time. I'm going to call all of the names on this form because nobody checked the box saying that they actually wanted to testify in person. But we do have a number of people who did sign in, and I assume that some of them just missed that box. So I will call everybody here one by one. We will start with, and each person will have 2 minutes to testify. Tony, do we have the clock ready? Cool. Harold Dams is the first person I have on my list here. Harold? Is there a Harold here? Wants to testify? Oh, you don't want to testify. Okay, great. Dwayne Alexander. Good morning. State your name hit the button on the right side of the microphone there, and just state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
My name is Dwayne Alexander in the Liberty Heights and Wabash community. Everybody calls me Wayno. I'm here to testify the horrible job that's being done in our community in servicing our people. The dollar stores negatively impact neighborhoods by displacing local grocery stores, exacerbating food deserts and poor nutrients through limited health food options, reducing local job creation and wages, extracting wealth from our communities via corporate profit, and potentially increasing crime and safety issues due to unsafe and lack security. Now, right here in the community that I'm from, our Honorable Councilwoman told you that we have 3 dollar stores within a block of each other. They're filthy. The products that are on the shelves are outdated, and we're constantly having issues with panhandlers in front of those buildings. Now, when we look across the country, we've seen numerous states like Cleveland, Ohio, who've also had the same issue, and they have eliminated these dollar stores being a block away from each other because they realized that it increased the crime rate, it increased the poverty rate, as well as it increases our unhealthiness rate. You know what I mean? So we don't have enough fresh food markets in our community, and our community is suffering. And now with the new administration in position, what does that look like for us in the next couple of years? I just ask everybody to choose wisely because I have a bedroom community. I have a partnership with the Maryland Food Bank, and we feed our seniors who are in dire need. They don't have the means to go and pay $5 and $10 for a box of cereal in in a dollar store that's outdated. You know what I mean? This is really hindering us from moving forward. And because of the research that is already done, I expected a lot of folks that are in these rooms representing us to have done the same research. because, you know, the dollar stores have increased crime across the country. Birmingham, Alabama also had a 69% poverty rate. And when they did the research, they realized that the dollar stores in those communities played a major part in that. You know what I mean? So Cleveland, Ohio, Birmingham, Alabama, I think we should have been way beyond them.
Thanks, sir.
Because of, yeah, our history. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Is it Laren Bowles? I'm sorry if I can't read this handwriting specifically. From Main Avenue? All right, I'll go on. David Scott? Okay. Okay, it is a sign-in sheet, but nobody signed up. Literally nobody checked the box saying that they wanted to testify, so I'm calling everybody on this sheet. Michelle Lefebvre.
I thought I signed up, checked the box.
You checked the box saying you're for the bill, but there's another box next to it with big red letters and a big red arrow saying, check here to testify.
Before I introduce myself, I just want to say, I parked my car in beautiful downtown Guilford and took the circulator down here. Zoom, zoom. I'm never going to drive down here again.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, Michelle, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Michelle Lefebvre. In my third professional career, I was a local administrative law judge, zoning hearing examiner, and zoning code enforcement officer. In that capacity, I reviewed proposed zoning legislation and applied and interpreted government zoning codes in relationship to various land use applications and appeals from agency decisions. There is often a significant chasm between what legislators think a bill will accomplish and what it actually accomplishes. For these reasons, I support the Planning Commission's concurrence that the bill be approved by the City Council with the amendments proposed by the Law Department. And I'm going to skip over what had been my critical concerns because I believe they're addressed in the amendments. I do, because I found it difficult to hear Law Department. I just do want to point out 2 things. One, Baltimore City has generated much of Maryland's law nonconformities case law, and the legislation as drafted, I don't know how it was amended, will add to that. Particularly with the minimum separation distance, because nonconformities have a right to intensify. And Baltimore City rarely gets that right. And I'm going to skip a couple of 2 more things because I also want to answer Councilman Porter's questions. Relatedly, I support the Office of Law's suggestion that in its May 29, 2005 review that consideration should be given whether the use should be added to the list of uses that require a building permit for continuation upon transfer or operation in the various sections. There are many reasons why this is important, but the one reason, and I know this from having looked at this issue a long time, is that employees can often have horrible working conditions. And so the permitting process will assist that. If I could quickly, a conditional use runs with the land. It's not specific to the property owner. The Board of Appeals has the right on a specific application, not for everyone, to require periodic renewals of a conditional use. I routinely gave 2-year renewals, something I'm not sure they do as a practice. And lastly, someday, the sale of alcoholic beverages in grocery stores are going to come to our city. And you need to think about this use in relationship to that at some juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, last person on my list, Sharon Jones. Yeah, please. Oh, her name. I got her. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair and everyone.
Good morning.
I ask for patience and forgiveness. I'm speaking with a lot of hats and a lot of things that need to be said. Okay, so first.
Just start with your name.
I am. My name is Sharon Jones, but I'm speaking as a resident, a messenger of the Liberty Coalition of Neighborhoods, and as an employee of Healthy Neighborhoods. I'm a native of Baltimore. I'm a City College grad. I'm an Ashburton resident, and I'm the Northwest Community Development Coordinator and Grants Coordinator for Healthy Neighborhoods. Okay, this bill has a lot of support. Lauren Kelly Washington, formerly of Jubilee Baltimore, now Robert Dortch, Kate Jennings, Reservoir Hill ED, Reservoir Hill Improvement Council ED. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go fast, but slow down. And Nika Namdi, SOS Fund, Fight Blight, all are backing, and Healthy Neighborhoods are backing this bill. I need for you to understand that health, wealth, and safety, that's really what we're talking about here, health. We're talking about health of your residents. The food quality, like Wayno mentioned, is not the best quality. I need you to understand that the second brain in your body is your gut, so when you put in subpar quality food, when you look at your crime rate, I want you to see correlations with that. Wealth, Healthy Neighborhoods, Baltimore City's middle neighborhood strategy. We are literally fighting to raise property values, retain citizens, bring people in. A proliferation, because that's really what we're talking about, a proliferation of dollar stores is problematic to the exact plans and strategies that you're putting in place to buy back the block. You have organizers and coordinators like myself in the community putting their finger on the pulse to come to say to you that the dollar store is detrimental. The Liberty Coalition of Neighborhoods is 14 neighborhoods between Ashburton, Grove Park, Garwin Oaks, and West Arlington. Like Councilwoman said, it is 3 small box stores along with one in Mondawmin, one in Belvedere, and all of you can speak. Councilwoman Ramos, this is the first time I'm really seeing you, Ms. Porter, Councilwoman Porter. But we can all stand inside of our neighborhood and point. So really what we're talking about is we need protections in place. And Councilwoman said it best, this is a start. This is not the end. We are all sitting here, the people that I mentioned are trying to build capacity, Greenmount, Liberty Heights, Heritage Cross in South Baltimore, trying to build capacity in your neighborhoods, and this is a direct opposite of what we're trying to do. So I need you to look at it and not just this one bill, like was mentioned by previous people, but in a guise of you guys are investing money in different ways around the city, and we need help. So a moratorium, a pause, a dispersal restriction, we need all the tools in the toolbox, and think about it in a 5-year period. What can we do in 5 years if we all play together nice? Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sharon.
Oh, does anybody have any questions for me? Okay. Okay, leave. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any comments from the administration?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the sponsors of the bill, Vice President Middleton and Councilwoman Ramos, for their partnership. Obviously, as the Vice President said, right, this is a true testament to you come back the second time to get it right, and the Vice President and the Councilwoman brought this bill back to us almost immediately to make sure that we were able to have the conversations with the agencies to parse out any concerns in the bill. So we are supportive of the bill with the amendments introduced by both sponsors.
Thank you. I will note that Councilman Blanchard's bill is a second time go around too, because I introduced a bill to eliminate parking, off-street parking mandates in my first term. So I'm really happy to have a couple of these joints on the docket today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I have somebody here testify that was not
Okay,
able to
great.
sign
You want to call your person?
Yeah, Executive Director of Waverly Main Street, Diana Emerson. Thank you.
Hey, Diana, how you doing?
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
I will be quick. Diana Emerson, Waverly Main Street. In 2022, the Dollar General moved into our Main Street corridor. It called for an immediate community outcry, which was unanswered by the property owner. We met with the dollar store to encourage an MOU to make sure that they could operate in good faith behavior, which they declined. The dollar store then showed us how they truly felt about our community. They allowed continuous pileup of trash in both the rear and the front of their building. They have very, very lax rules and regulations as it relates to shoplifting and theft, which meant our local businesses had to increase their own security presence to protect their businesses. They also, on a regular basis, ignored city rules, laws, and regulations. This is not a good partner. They have showed us time and time again across the city what they think of our city and our communities. As a Main Street, we thrive with small businesses. This is their livelihood. Our residents and our neighbors are very concerned when we have businesses like the dollar store that move in. In our area from York Road to Greenmount Avenue, we have over 6 dollar stores that are all within walking distance of each other. They all sell the same poor quality products, and they show us time and time again what our value and what our worth is. This bill allows our communities to have a voice in who we bring into our communities. It allows our businesses to thrive, which is huge in making sure our economic development improves, not just in downtown, but in our small neighborhoods, especially our main streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, with no further public testimony, I will just ask that before we conclude the hearing on this bill, that members make note of the amendments that are in your packet immediately following the first reader text of the bill. There are 4 pages to them. It is 4 numbered amendments, and the sponsor of the bill will bring them up when we go into our voting session after the next bill hearing. With that, we conclude our hearing on 250040, and we will move on to 250062.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before I step up to the podium and hand the chair over to Vice President Middleton so I can present this bill, I want to note to the committee members, I sent an email around about process and run a show for today and had intended to vote 250062 today, but unfortunately was presented with additional amendments from the fire department at 4 o'clock yesterday. And they are, while technical in nature, substantive enough in the, or substantial enough in the drafting requirement that there was no world in which DLR was going to be able to get them ready for the hearing today. I had initially thought maybe I would ask members if we could vote the bill without any amendments and put forth those amendments on second reader. But instead, what I'd like to do is add this to the voting session that we will have next week. We have 10 other bills that we're going to hear and vote on next week, plus 2 others that we already heard and will be voting on. So at the beginning of next Thursday's hearing, we'll just start with a voting session on those bills related to Amtrak and single stair, and then we'll move on to the 10 other bills. Does that make sense, folks? All right, great. Madam Chair, I'm going to hand it over to you. And I have about a 15-minute presentation I'm going to do, but nobody else following me.
State your name for the record.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Dorsey. I'm presenting Council Bill 250062. I represent the 3rd City Council District. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that's going to be up on the screen. Tony's going to pull that up. There are also printed copies of these slides for members at your seats. Great. Multifamily buildings in the U.S. are boring. They cannot serve diverse needs and mostly take the form of huge block or half block size buildings. Basically, every new apartment building you've ever seen looks more or less just like every other one you've ever seen. They can't help but be this way because of the one simple and outdated rule: this bill will change. In the rest of the world, especially Europe, the possibilities of multifamily design are far more flexible. But in the US, buildings are forced into a particular fixed form by a rule that requires all buildings higher than 3 stories to have 2 stairwells and a hallway between them on every floor, what's commonly referred to as a double-loaded corridor. Meanwhile, elsewhere, it is legal to build anywhere from 4 to 10 stories with just 1 central stairwell. Next slide. The double-loaded corridor standard came about in response to tragic fires in the early 20th century, but since then, building materials and firefighting technology have improved greatly with sprinkler requirements, smoke evacuation from stairwells, fire-rated construction methods and materials, and smoke alarms. What was once a common sense rule is now an obsolete regulation that holds back housing production. A recent study by Pew Research showed no difference in fire safety outcomes between buildings with 1 stair and buildings with 2 stairs. Single-stair buildings like what this bill allows are already legal and have been for a very long time in New York and Seattle. In New York City, there are 4,440 modern single-stair buildings in which the overall rate of fire deaths is the same as in other residential buildings. Looking at New York City and Seattle's modern single-stairway buildings between 2012 and 2024, Pew found a total of 4 fire-related deaths, but the lack of a second stairway did not play a role in any of those fatalities. In the Netherlands, where single stairway construction is common in 4 and 5 story buildings, the fire death rate in those buildings is on par with the fire-related death rate in other types of residential buildings. And overall, residential fire-related deaths in the Netherlands are 1/3 those of the US. Next. It may shock some to hear that Americans are not the best at everything, but allowing single stair up to mid-rise heights, that is 5 or 8 stories, is best practice in all of the developed world. Next. Here's your typical status quo building. It only works at large sizes because that's when the economies of scale start to kick in. If you want to build above 3 stories, the space that is given up and the cost to construct the second staircase and hallway are so great that to make the economics work, the footprint of the building has to expand as well. This, of course, means that there is no opportunity to develop multifamily greater than 3 stories high, except on lots that are half a city block or more in size. When then, the only people who can develop such buildings are the biggest developers, the ones with the greatest capital access. And even still, the economics remains so challenging that it incentivizes the highest number, smallest, and most expensive possible units. This should be concerning to anybody who wants smaller homegrown developers to have more opportunity to shape our city, and to do so in a way that meets more people's needs and fits better into our neighborhoods. Additionally, because of the 2 stairs and linking corridor, units have no cross ventilation, and the vast majority have windows facing only one side. It's not just the economics, but the design of these buildings that disincentivizes family-sized units. If your whole apartment faces only one side of a building, in order for each bedroom, your living room, and kitchen to all have natural light from windows, you would have to line up each of those rooms in a row, essentially turning your whole apartment into one long hallway. Nobody really wants to live that way, so nobody builds 3 and 4 bedroom apartments in this way in these status quo buildings, and so 3 and 4 bedroom apartments simply don't get built. Not only do multifamily buildings all end up looking and feeling the same, but that sameness becomes a place of comfort for lenders and investors who end up not wanting to fund any form of development that doesn't match that formula. Next. Ironically enough, this sameness exists no matter how strange a shape the building is or how great in size it is. The double-loaded corridor building cannot exist on smaller parcels, and the scale of product the status quo incentivizes is wildly out of scale with the rest of basically any neighborhood. Here are some examples from Boston because I borrowed these slides from Julian Frost's presentation for the Congress for the New Urbanism there, but these are equally relevant to Baltimore. You can see here the way a common-sized lot could be situated with a 6-story building containing anywhere from 6 to 24 units. And you can compare that to what actually gets built on much, much larger lots. Next. I'm not saying, oh, Councilman Bullock has stepped out. I've got a slide from his district here. I'm not saying that the physical characteristics of the building are why La Cité is such a problem in the Poppleton community, but it's a stunning example of what the status quo incentivizes and necessitates, where the alternative that single-stair design allows is something that's much more incremental in size compared to the rest of the neighborhood. A typical row home property may only be about 2,000 square feet, and a small development of a 4 or 5-story building might have a footprint equivalent to just 2 or 3 row homes, say 4,000, maybe 5,000 square feet. Instead, we get La Cité drop down on 100,000 square feet of land. But it's not just in Poppleton. In Riverside, 1110 Key Highway is a 60,000 square foot parcel. The Woodbury on West Cold Spring Lane sits on a 270,000 square foot parcel. In Hamden, the apartments at the Rotunda are situated on a similar sized portion of that much larger lot. In my own district, MCB Real Estate just opened the Enolia on 129,000 square feet. But Harford Road also has some of the smallest developments happening in the city, but small is still relative. Sohi Union is 24,000 square feet, and the only other development in planning on that corridor is over 37,000 square feet. And it's not just the cost and character of market rate housing that is driven by the double-loaded corridor standard. The subsidized and affordable apartments built in partnership with Rebuild Metro in the Johnston Square neighborhood take over 11,000 square feet to make work at Greenmount and Chase. Healthcare for the Homeless opens Sojourner Place in the Oliver community on a more than 30,000 square foot parcel. These are great and important developments for so many reasons, but it shouldn't be impossible to create the housing we need on smaller parcels and smaller budgets than what these projects take. If we want neighborhood development that is much more like its surroundings, then we have to actually allow it by removing the double-loaded corridor standard that prohibits it. Next. Here's the alternative this bill allows. Buildings that take up a small individual footprint but can be chained together for blocks or parts of blocks, whether by one developer or many. Buildings that, without a hallway required to go from one end of the building to the other, can have units of different shapes and sizes and allow a light and a cross breeze from windows on 2 or 3 sides instead of just one. I'm gonna get my water. Here's another look at the fundamental differences between the layout of a double-loaded corridor building compared to a similar-sized chain of single-stair buildings. On the left, you see a building with little unit diversity and 2 staircases fitting 20 units per floor, versus 4 buildings, each with its own staircase, offering fewer total units, 16 total, but of more diverse sizes and overall better design. Next. And here's another look, a reminder at how these compare in terms of natural light and airflow. Next. And would you rather step into a scene out of The Shining every time you walk out your door? Or a place that's designed for community and openness? You want The Shining. Some of y'all are sick. Red rum. Next slide. Here's the last thing I want to emphasize, and then I'm going to quickly review the basic provisions of the bill. What this bill allows is something that we already have and already permit. We have had single-stair buildings in this city for more than a century. Many of them have been continuously occupied and not had to even be upgraded. And some have been sitting vacant for decades, like the ones that caught on fire just a couple of weeks ago, shown on the slide that we have here. If you want to open up a 4, 5, or 6-story single-stair building in Baltimore today, you can do that, but only if it's an old building that you have to make extremely difficult modifications to in order to meet fire safety standards. The International Existing Building Code, the IEBC, separate from the International Building Code, the IBC, that this bill amends, the International Existing Building Code already allows single stair in existing building renovations. What this bill does is create a similar standard as what exists in the IEBC for allowing the same thing to be newly constructed. If we believe the fire safety standards are good enough when being retrofitted into 100-year-old buildings, there's absolutely no reason the same standards can't be much more easily applied and adhered to in brand new construction permitted and inspected under the IBC. Next slide. The Crook Horner Lofts opened earlier this year at 301 North Howard. Bell Urban and the Civic Group renovated and combined a 4-story and a 6-story building into 2 retail spaces and 15 gorgeous and fully leased apartments above them, all with just 1 staircase. The same standard that project and others like it have adhered to for existing buildings are what this bill will allow for brand new buildings. Next. The bill is barely 2 pages long, and basically it is nothing but a list of ways to address fire safety above and beyond what we require for other buildings. As I mentioned earlier, the standards that exist in other places, like New York and Seattle, have been thoroughly and independently researched and are shown to be of no lesser safety than modern buildings of different types. This bill proposes those same standards that exist elsewhere, and in certain ways are even more stringent in this bill. These are the main points. Single-stair buildings for long-term residential occupancy, that is, not hotels, not rooming houses, boarding houses, what's called R2 occupancy, may be up to 6 stories in type 1, 2, 3A, and 4 construction, and 4 stories in type 5 construction. The number of units in a building is limited to a maximum of 4 units per floor. The entrance to a unit may not be greater than 20 feet away from the stairway and must be separated from the stairway by a fire-rated hallway. The distance from the stairway to the farthest distance inside a unit is limited. The building must be fully sprinklered. The staircase must be pressurized, meaning a mechanical system must be installed to ensure that the staircase cannot fill with smoke in the event of a fire. The staircase, walls, doors, and other construction elements are required to be variously of 60, 90, and 120-minute fire ratings. Next. The buildings these standards produce are exceptionally safe, are shown to cost less to build, and to allow for construction projects that are needed and wanted but impossible today. I ask for your support, and we'll take questions now, but at some point we'll also want to mention the amendments that we have from the fire department. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey, for your presentation. Does the committee have any questions at this point for the sponsor of the bill? Yes, Councilman.
I almost called on myself.
Councilman Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When it comes to safety and fire, you spoke a little about the numbers in which it seems like it's the same in the Netherlands, correct? Could you speak about the provisions in which every building would have to comply under when it comes to the single stairway? Because I think a lot of people's concerns are, if there is a fire, what is the game plan? How are people able to get out when, if you have two staircases, there's a plan in place. I don't know how much people will actually follow it or not, but there's a plan in place that you use one and then the fire department is actually able to go up the other.
Thank you, I appreciate the question. So the two staircase rule came from a time when the prevailing mentality was, if a fire starts anywhere in any building, the whole thing's going up like a match. It's just, you gotta get everybody out as fast as possible or everybody's dead. Because of the advancements in the advent of sprinkler systems, fire alarms, materials, even like drywall and fire-rated caulking and things like this, and pressurized staircases, most fires that start anywhere in any building that has a sprinkler system never spread beyond that room and are suppressed where they begin. And so all of these systems, as well as the heightened standards, so in other buildings, you might not even have a fire rated wall requirement for certain types of walls in certain types of buildings, but in this, we say that certain walls need to be of 60 or 90 or 120-minute fire ratings so that fire can't spread from one room to the next, or from one unit to the hallway, which has a heightened fire rating, or from the hallway to the staircase, which has a heightened fire rating, and the entire building is sprinklerized. And so what this bill does is so dramatically reduce the likelihood of a fire that causes kind of a panicked evacuation of a building that also has a smaller footprint in the first place, so there are fewer people potentially coming down that staircase in the first place, that this conflict of the possibility of fire going up and residents coming down is essentially mitigated. If I could go to one of my super secret slides. I've got some super secret slides, so I appreciate this question. Let's go to the next one. This is what the status quo allows on the bottom and the right. And in the top left is what's being proposed here, right? So right now, I can have just two stairs and I can have a building that's the size of the length of 2 football fields, or a hallway that's the length of 2 football fields. And I think that shows 48 units on one floor, which is like totally plausible as a contemporary status quo development. So I could have 48 units on each floor of a building, all coming down one staircase if the other is filled with smoke, because it isn't required to have a pressurized staircase, right? So I've got one staircase fully full of smoke, and so I've got the fire department maybe going up that one staircase that's full of smoke, and 48 units of residence from each floor of the building, all coming down the other staircase. Or if the staircase is the one is so full of smoke, maybe the fire department's going up the one that's not full of smoke at the same time, that those 48 units of residence are all coming down from each floor of the building, almost 300 units all using one staircase, instead of a maximum of 4 units per floor coming down one staircase.
Thank you. And just to follow up, can you just
Hold that. I know you're going to do agency reports, but since we're on that question, I think the fire department wants to add an answer to, since it's fresh in our minds, to what your answer was to his first question. Yes, go ahead.
So, Councilperson Dorsey, thank you very much. Excellent presentation, 100 on there. I can see some eyes that were going on to this. He is 100%, and probably some of the questions that members might be feeling is exactly as he said, a single stairwell for the number of persons in a 4-unit apartment building is wide enough for members to come down. The sprinklers will turn around and are generally as long as the sprinklers are in the buildings. NFPA standards, American Fire Sprinklers, National Fire Sprinklers, all corroborate everything the councilperson is saying. And then the doors, that corridor is a protected rated corridor. And I see the things going in, as you brought up about the IEBC, those were existing buildings that were approved at the time and under that code. And to not create an economic cost to make you go back and retrofit. And Baltimore has always been innovative, exactly as the councilperson has said. We have apartment buildings in the Guilford area and all that have one stairwell and a second means of egress. You go through the bathroom, it's a coated glass door. You bust it and you go through the apartment and get to a fire escape. That was all premised because there was no sprinklers. With everything that councilperson is proposing and asking, it's definitely going to be 100%. So if you're trying to figure out about old construction to new construction, that's the variation and difference, and I hope I elaborated for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just identify yourself as a matter of record.
Sorry about that. Captain Dennis
That's okay.
Dawson, Baltimore City Fire Office of the Fire Marshal.
Thank you. And then we'll go to your second question.
Yep, and I guess you can answer this question, and fire department, you guys can also chime in. Could you go over what exactly a pressurized stairwell is? Because once again, I think the important part is we can talk about all these things, but if for the folks that are here and people that are watching online and will watch online, I think it's important to kind of explain what that is so people can get an idea of what it does.
Sure. So the bill requires that if you have only one staircase, that it be quote unquote pressurized. What this is essentially is a mechanical system that serves to evacuate the stairwell of any smoke. So it just cannot be filled with smoke in the event that smoke exists.
So to add on to it, when the stairwell's pressurized, if that door is stuck open, blocked open, or kept open, it creates pressure. Smoke will not enter that door well. And then prior to that, the ventilation system evacuates smoke out. So as soon as the fire alarm or sprinkler is triggered, it'll pressurize just like on a high-rise building. If that door is stuck open, the smoke will stay out of that doorway and keeps clean, safe air egress for members to go out.
Yeah, it's a thing that exists as a requirement in very tall buildings, but that in buildings of mid-rise height like this bill is addressing is not required in 2-stair buildings, but if you were in a very tall high-rise building, it would be required. And so we're taking that high-rise technology and applying it even to the even smaller buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, comment from the 11th district.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilman, for the bill. Just briefly, if you're going to know, one of my brothers is in the Air Force, was stationed in Germany for 3 years. He had the top floor apartment in his building, which was a 5-story with single stair. It was a 3-bedroom unit that was the coolest apartment I've ever been in, and like a building that is prettier than like anything we have in America, in a neighborhood that was like not a particularly ritzy area near a military base, right? And so I would love to have that type of stuff in Baltimore.
Thanks. Yeah, and look, the character, the quality of single-stair buildings offers a lot of opportunity that like I said, the margins are so tight on the economics of construction of double-loaded corridor buildings that essentially you get developers using kind of the cheapest cladding on the exterior of the building or the most like humdrum kind of finishes and things like that inside of units. Whereas you go to places that have made single stair construction the norm for literally centuries in most of the rest of the world, and you do experience buildings that are kind of a much nicer finish and have a much nicer character to them and have nicer elements to them. My wife and I traveled to Berlin a couple of years ago, and we spent 9 days there. We were 3 days in three different apartments of 3 different friends in 3 different neighborhoods, and all 3 of them were single stair constructed buildings. Some of them were pre-war buildings, some of them were modern buildings, and some of them were pre-war buildings that had post-war additions put on to make them even taller, and still single stair buildings. And all of them are nicer than any of my friends' apartments in Baltimore. And when I go to New York, I visit friends, and literally every friend I have ever visited in New York lives in a single stair building, I think. Most places I have traveled elsewhere, in Paris and around Italy, in Sweden and Japan, I've been to places, and almost every place I've ever stayed where that is somebody's home was in a single stair building. It's just absolutely, utterly normal everywhere except for here. Yes.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Councilman Dorsey, I want to focus on some of our older adult populations, and how do you account for kind of aging in place with this technology?
Thank you. A couple, one, single stair buildings are not necessarily devoid of elevators. So the Crook Horner Lofts building that I used as an example has the single stairway and the landing area, the hallway area where you go from the stairway then to the entrance to the units, goes from the stairway straight to an elevator. So there's an elevator there. Elevators are not required. They are also extremely expensive to build in the United States in a way that they are not nearly as expensive in other countries. I would love to have small elevator reform, but we have ADA issues with that. The other thing is that when you build above 3 stories, I think this significantly increases the likelihood that you build 4 or more units total. And in addition to the ADA, there is also the Fair Housing Act. And the Fair Housing Act has a requirement that if you are building 4 or more units, which again, I think is much more likely if you're building more than 3 stories, if you're building 4 or more units, the first floor, the ground floor units, any ground floor units that you're building have to be designed and constructed as what the FHA refers to as adaptable. They don't necessarily have to be ADA fully accessible from the jump, but they have to be designed and constructed in such a way that if a person who has disability needs later on says, I want to rent this apartment, that is essentially easy and feasible for the owner of the building to convert that or to make those modifications to meet those needs.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the 1st District? Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you, Councilperson Dorsey, for bringing this before us. I'm very excited about it. And forgive me if you cover this, but I think in reading the materials and listening to the presentation, obviously it's focused on new construction, but reference was made to existing construction, both from a historical example of this has been normal in the past and still functions in really normal and safe ways in our city and others. But also was lifted up, I feel like maybe in your presentation, certainly in prepared materials, that somehow this bill would also make reuse of historic single stair buildings more affordable or more possible. And so just remind us, because then one of the examples you gave that we were just talking about a second ago on Howard Street was of historic buildings that were redone. So does this touch on the reuse of buildings at all?
No. Thank you for the question, and glad to give the clarification. So this bill modifies the IBC, which applies to new construction. Separate from the IBC is a parallel set of standards called the IEBC, International Existing Building Code. The IEBC already has this in it. And that's how projects like the Crook Corner Lofts and others, I don't know if Jake Wittenberg is here, but I know Jake is the president of Maryland Building Industry Association, Baltimore chapter, and he's done single stair buildings in Baltimore that were permitted under the IEBC as well. So it's already possible to reuse existing buildings.
And it may have been then in well-meaning, but potentially folks who didn't understand the nuance of the proposal of public emails and things that arrived. But you had also lifted up the buildings on Howard Street that had burned. And so I thought perhaps there was an argument that those were sitting vacant because something was preventing their reuse that we were going to address. So I just wanted to make sure I understood.
I appreciate that. No, I just point out the prevalence of buildings that have always been in use, are coming back into use, and still waiting to be in use. And I do think that as we normalize single stair construction as a means of brand new infill development, say where we have, and this is the other thing, the bill allows various types of construction to go up 4, 5, 6 stories, but it doesn't mean that every single stair building is going to go to that maximum height, right? One thing that I think, we might see here and there is a block that has, say, 60% vacant row homes, where maybe there were 2 or 3 that were adjacent that have been raised and are just a vacant lot at this point, all adjacent in the middle of a block. And if it's, say, a 3-story home block with this big gap tooth in the middle of it, maybe 1 4-story building goes up in the place of that. And as we start to mix new construction single stair into the pattern of blight abatement in the city and otherwise infill development, I think it becomes more normalized. And as I said also, because the market of lending and investing is so skewed by the status quo and only wanting to lend to things that fit that particular model, we start to see new lending patterns happen when this becomes done more and more. And then I think that also helps to accelerate the rate at which we see renovations of existing buildings done.
Thank you, Councilperson. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Middleton, for holding it down. Okay, Tony, I think we're done with the slides. Thank you. Okay, we will now go to agency reports. We will start with the Law Department.
Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. The Law Department approves this bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Great, thank you. Where is my list? Agencies, is it on here? Planning Commission.
Good morning, Caitlin Audette with the Planning Department. The Planning Commission heard the bill at the August 28th hearing and voted 6 in favor, 6 in present, in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Caitlin. Finance. Tyler Schnella from the mayor's office was here earlier. He was, the finance department could not be present today, and he spoke on their behalf in the previous hearing. But I will just concur here. I'm sure that we have a favorable report from the finance department. We have a do not oppose from the finance department. Thank you. Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We respectfully stand behind our favorable bill report.
Great, thank you. And the Fire Department.
Good morning, Captain Dennis Dawson, Baltimore City Fire Department. We are supportive of the bill and the amendments that we worked on with the council person and worked diligently to address the noted issues you pointed to.
Great, thank you. I will talk about the amendments that we don't have with us today, but first, I want to see if there are any questions from the committee members for any of the agencies. Okay, great. So regarding amendments, and then we will go to public testimony. If you are here in person and want to testify, be sure you signed the sheet for this bill in the back and check the box with the big red arrow pointing to it saying, I want to testify, please. And if you are online, there is a link in the chat to sign up to testify there. We will go to the in-person testimony before we go to the online testimony. But just quickly, as I hope I can, we had several amendment requests from the fire department. The purpose of those amendments are outlined, are detailed in the fire department's bill report. That was the result of a lot of back and forth over many, many months. And I have to give a lot of thanks to Tyler Schnella for being a great go-between with me and the fire department to just make sure things kept moving along. But then there were two other amendments that the fire department brought up yesterday. One of them regarding type 3A construction, which is limited already to only 5 stories of R2 occupancy. And so the amendment that will also be added to those noted in the bill report is essentially technical. It's just clarifying that R3 construction does not allow up to 6 stories of occupancy, but only 5 of occupancy. It will be written in such a way that also respects that you can have type 3A occupancy. So if you're not familiar with the building types, type 1 and 2 are referred to as non-combustible, meaning that the structure and the exterior of the building can't catch on fire. They're made of concrete and steel. And then type 3 has a combustible interior, but a non-combustible exterior. So you have wood framing to the building, but you have, say, brick cladding on the exterior. Type 4 is a building that is made of mass timber, and type 5 is entirely combustible. So the bill says that you can have up to 6 stories for types 1, 2, 3A, and 4, but only 4 stories of occupancy for type 5. And this amendment will clarify that even in a 6-story building that maybe has a concrete constructed ground floor, what's referred to as a podium, that would be a type 1 or 2 non-combustible first floor, you could still have 5 stories of type 3A construction above the podium, what is commonly referred to as a 5/1 design. The other amendment from the fire department, which I appreciate them bringing to my attention or our attention, I just wish I'd known sooner, is and maybe I should have known this, but when you modify the building code, anything that you do in the building code has to also be copied word for word into the fire code. And so essentially the whole bill has to be rewritten and have all of our amendments incorporated into that text, so that that text can be added simultaneously, word for word, into the fire code as well as the building code, which we have in front of us. And There are also a couple of tables that need to note a couple of these things, and tables are actually quite cumbersome for our diligent drafters in the Department of Legislative Reference to put together. So when they learned about all of this additional amendment drafting that they needed to do just yesterday, there was really just no way they were going to have that for today. And so as I noted at the beginning of our session here today, I'm not going to ask for this bill to be voted today. But DLR is going to get us these amendments right away, and we will put this on at the voting session at the beginning of our next hearing. But between now and then, I will come individually to all the members of the committee to make sure that you understand all these amendments in the next week. Okay? We will go now to public testimony in person. We will start with, is it Dustin or Dustin? Dustin, thank you. Dustin Watson. Hit that button on the right. Thank you. Good morning. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Dustin Watson. I am representing the American Institute of Architects Baltimore chapter. I'm a director on the board. I'm also representing myself as a licensed architect in the state of Maryland, as well as a number of other states and provinces. I'd like to read our letter from the AIA board to you guys. On behalf of AIA Baltimore and the nearly 1,000 architectural professionals we represent, we express our enthusiastic support for City Council Bill 250062, which will update the building code to allow for a single exit stair in multifamily residences under certain conditions. We expect this change will propel sustainable development in our city, favoring density, affordability, and diversity among other benefits. We are excited about the potential this will unlock for us as design professionals and for the communities we serve. As architects, we often work hard on exciting housing projects with great clients, often local developers or nonprofits, only to learn that the financing simply will not work and the drawings sit on our shelves. Affordable housing projects are frequently lost in the cycle because of the constrained budgets and the complicated financing involved. The single exit legislature could make all the difference. By reducing the spatial footprint of circulation, this forward-thinking approach allows for increased housing density, more natural light, ventilation, and greater flexibility in unit layouts. In many cases, this will mean the difference between a project that remains a dream and one that gets built. As architects, we are committed to helping create beautiful, safe, affordable housing for our diverse community of Baltimore neighbors, and the proposed code updates would be a powerful new tool to help us do so. The brilliance of a single stair building, I'll skip ahead. Along with the climate resilient, single stair buildings will support more social resilience as well. Instead of the traditional double loaded corridor, lined with studio and one bedroom apartments, a single stair building can support a variety of unit types and the accompanying diversity of family structure, lifestyle, age, and income level that they attract. Neighbors can support each other, age in place, and lead healthier lives. For these reasons, we are excited about the positive paradigm shift that this legislation poses for our industry and our city. We believe it will empower us as architects to be innovative and brave as we pursue housing solutions for Baltimore. Sincerely, AIA Board.
Thank you, Dustin. Jack Bevier.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jack Bevier. I'm here with Dominion Properties. We're a small developer and renovator. We've been active in the city since 2002. Our office is on the 1000 block of Calvert Street. We are most active in Baltimore's middle neighborhoods and have always endeavored to create projects that have a naturally affordable component to them. Making pro formas work has obviously been more and more difficult, and unfortunately I think it's been our experience that we've seen new multifamily construction, the unit sizes get smaller and smaller, it seems, every year. I think that really enjoyed Mr. Dorsey's presentation. I think you proposed the case for the situation very eloquently. One of the main factors in trying to keep projects better and more affordable is how much of the 5,000 square foot building can we actually turn into usable square footage. And the two-stair impediment is something that increases the loss factor, how much space we have to build that people don't actually get to live in. And this will alleviate some pressure on that front, which I think will make the quality of the units that are built better and more naturally, and alleviate pressure to keep things more naturally affordable. So for those reasons, very much in support of this bill and appreciate your guys' consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Fannin. Morning, Mr. President.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee. My name is Josh Fannin. I am the president of IAFF Local 964, Baltimore Fire Officers, representing the lieutenants, captains, and battalion chiefs of the Baltimore City Fire Department. We believe that fire code is written in blood, and therefore any revision to it should be approached with a high standard of care. And because, in my opinion, a high standard of care, collaboration, cooperation, and due diligence did occur here in crafting this specific piece of legislation, I stand here in support of it. I want to make everyone aware that the International Association of Firefighters has a policy statement out against or opposing single staircase in 6-story residential buildings generally. I spoke with the authors directly. I believe if they had the specific fire code standards that are incorporated into this specific legislation, they might have a different opinion. I also spoke to some of my brothers in the Uniform Fire Officers Association, Local 854 in New York City, where they've had this on the books since, I believe, 2013. Some of them who have responded to fires and other emergencies in buildings like this. No one of them had any opinion. They had no belief or opinion or experience that there was any increase in life safety risk or hazard as opposed to any of the other buildings that they had already seen. And for all those reasons, I support not only this legislation, but I'm really happy about the way that Councilman Dorsey had gone about it in collaboration with the local unions, the Baltimore City Fire Department, the experts in the Office of the Fire Marshal, and members of the committee. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Jed Weeks.
Morning, Chairman Dorsey, Vice President Middleton, members of the committee. Jed Weeks here with Bike More in Action, and we're in support of this. You have our written testimony. I did just want to focus on a couple things that committee members asked.
Can you pull the mic down just a little bit?
Yeah, sorry. Specifically, from your second secret slide, the chairman talked very much about, if one staircase is out of service, you're back down to one staircase, and you have a ton of units that need to exit that single floor. But we really didn't focus on the length of that 2 football field length building, right? And so if you are someone in the middle of that building and you need to get to one of those staircases, you're traveling an entire football field length before you even reach the stairs. Whereas in these single stair buildings, you're opening your door into a very short corridor and you're immediately at the staircase. And so you can exit the entire length of the stairs of that building before you'd even get to the stairs in one of those double loaded corridors. That really also goes to accessibility. So, older adults who, might not be in a wheelchair or something, but still, are slower moving or, can't walk as far, it can really limit their access in those buildings. And so legislation like this, particularly paired with parking minimum repeals, can allow building designs in such a way that allow older adults to age in place a lot more easily. And that is why the national AARP and the local AARP have been very supportive of legislation like this. I think that is the only point I wanted to make beyond our written testimony. So if you have any questions for me, otherwise, thank you.
Thank you. Joan Floyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here because of questions and concerns about how this bill relates to, or could relate to Bill 250064, which is a bill that increases the number, size, and density of attached multifamily structures on row house blocks. And I brought my exhibit from the other bill, and I'll leave this with you all today, but this is what we're talking about in terms of a building envelope. And I noticed that both the DHCD and the fire department do think and seem to think in their agency reports that this will be perfect for narrow lots. And, you know, so we're talking about long apartment buildings on narrow lots in the R8 zone, 12 to 24 feet. However, we do have lot consolidation by right in this city. So they could end up being consolidated lots and larger ones, with little or no rear setback and 45 feet in height, which is the envelope of what can be added by right on row house R8 blocks under this package of bills. What exactly will these buildings look like? Will the 45-foot firewall right next to someone else's little backyard, will it be, 2-hour rated, 1-hour rated? Will there be windows for the new bedrooms, or will windows no longer be required? I was trying to figure things out, but I don't want to have to do that myself. Will there be fire escapes? Will there even be a rear exit? I'm just asking for someone to please translate this bill into something that we can anticipate when we look at this whole package of bills, and especially, like I said, with respect to 250064, what that's going to look like on our blocks, R8 blocks. That's it.
Thank you. The bill only changes what the bill changes. So there is where windows are already required in the building code or the fire code, there is no change to the requirement for there to be windows. Luke Ziegler. Just before you do, Luke, I only have one other name of one person who has signed up and checked that they want to testify. If there is another sheet and anybody else has signed up to testify that wants to, do so now, because we're going to collect that last sheet. Thank you, Luke.
All right, good morning. I'm Luke Ziegler. I'm a city resident. I'm also here representing Balt Pop, which is a local urbanist advocacy organization. And I'd like to express approval for the bill on behalf of the organization. So just personally, I can second the expert testimony that Councilman Dorsey and others gave just based on my own experience as a renter in Baltimore City. So the apartment building I currently live in is a two-stair building. It's a modern building, and it demonstrates a number of the disadvantages that were discussed. So the hallways are dim and uninviting. It's not shining, maybe it's like hospital kind of vibe. The central courtyard is steep and narrow. It feels kind of more like a ravine than a usable space. And unsurprisingly, I've never seen anybody using it, basically. And within the apartments, the windows are pretty limited. Some of those problems can be mitigated with design, obviously, but others are built into the requirements of the building code. I have lived in apartments that didn't have those issues, but they were universally old structures, early 20th century, before the single stair was outlawed. And I think that if we do want to bring those back, where there's kind of like well-lit, welcoming rooms and where there's courtyards that are actually grassy and nice, then we do have to consider making changes like the one suggested in the bill. So obviously the main concern around the bill is fire safety, and many elements of the building code, like the representatives from the fire department were mentioning, are needed to protect lives. But single stair buildings, from what I've seen, have a strong safety record. And in the rest of the world where single stair buildings are allowed up to a certain height, fire deaths aren't higher than in the US, and in fact, they're often lower. Moreover, the requirements for the fire safety in these buildings is going to be higher than it is for regular apartments, not to mention single family houses. And so these buildings should actually be safer than the buildings that are currently being constructed. I'm a renter. My friends and family mostly do live in rented accommodations, so I wouldn't support the bill if I thought it increased danger, but I think it does, and I think it'll make a lot of new things possible for the city. So thank you, and I just want to once again express support.
Thanks, Luke. William Washington. the first man to enter the chamber this evening will be the last to speak. Or this morning, rather. You're tall.
Okay,
Pull it up a little bit.
All right.
There you go.
Yes.
Tell us your name.
Okay, my name is William Washington. I am from East Darlington in the 7th Councilorianic District. I'm in favor of this bill because I think it does a number of things as far as opening up new opportunities for development. Around where I live, there are very large houses, but they're limited as to what you can do with them because of the current building codes. With this change, those sites could become available for development, whereas right now a lot of them are, especially further up Liberty Heights Avenue, a lot of them are vacant. They're constant fire hazards because of squatters. There are also other places that I could think of that would open up. The Parkview area, which is around Druid Hill Park. There are a lot of vacant buildings, vacant lots around there. I think that would be a great way to leverage that great public amenity. There are also a number of spots around Woodbury that have sat vacant, where you're getting, I've overheard, people in conversations, I've had conversations with people when I'm out and about the problem with squatters and vacants. And if we opened up, and as far as the concerns about parking, I think with the limits as to how many units could exist on one of these projects, I think that concerns about parking is mitigated. So it's a pretty good bill.
Thank you. I concur.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes public. Oh, we have in-person public testimony, and then we have 4 online. I will call you, and then I think do we unmute them, or? We send it to them, and then. All right, so you'll have to unmute yourself when we get to you. The first person I'm calling is my buddy Julian Frost. Thank you so much for letting me borrow your slides. Julian, you are up. You got 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members of the committee. My name is Julian Frost. I'm speaking as a Baltimore City resident strongly in favor of this bill. So by increasing the story limit for a single stair up to 6 stories, this bill opens up small lots for infill development, which will increase the number of safe, sprinklered, up to code, and newly built dwellings for people to live in Baltimore. Developers of market rate housing and affordable housing alike will take advantage of being able to build up to 6 stories on a slim footprint. In May of this year, in my role as a board member of the Congress for the New Urbanism Mid-Atlantic chapter, I organized a design competition that challenged local architects to design a single-stair building on an underutilized lot in Baltimore City. This initiative experienced an outpouring of support and enthusiasm from architects, developers, and just regular folks. The design proposals demonstrated how this bill would make housing possible on tight lots, which before single-stair reform, we simply accepted as surface parking lots or dusty, neglected gaps in the urban fabric. From an urban design perspective, single-stair reform allows Baltimore to dream big. With the right coordination, large vacant properties like the Superblock and TOD sites can be redefined, rebuilt in the European style, with slim buildings built to the street, allowing ample room in the back for communal courtyards and other amenities. Single-stair reform is the flagship policy of a burgeoning informal movement in the US and Canada to critically examine elements of our building codes that have been sold to us for decades as rational, scientific, and necessary for safety, but in fact, increase construction costs and suppress housing supply for no demonstrated safety benefit. To date, 19 states and 11 cities in the US have taken on single-stair reform. Please give this bill a favorable recommendation so Baltimore City can operate on the forefront of research-backed housing policy. I also want to express my appreciation of our local fire officials and unions for their willingness to weigh trade-offs and work collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Also, thank you so much for organizing the CNU competition, and thank you to Lauren and AIA for hosting that competition. If there are any committee members who want to see the designs that were proposed for single-stair buildings, I have a packet from that competition. The charge was hypothetically take a vacant or underdeveloped lot in Baltimore City and design a building concept for that site. And 9 architectural practitioners chose 9 different lots around the city, and we have examples, the buildings, the concepts that they designed for those sites all around the city, and there's some pros and cons to them, and I'd love to share them with committee members. I have them all up in my office. Thanks again, Julian. Next online, we have Keandra Pryor. Is she Keandra, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hello?
There you are. I hear you. You there?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now. You're a little bit quiet, but we can hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder.
Oh, great.
Hi, my name is Keandra Pryor, and I am representing the Reservoir Hill Association. I want to note that a lot of things were clarified this morning by the panel that we consistently had concerns and questions about, mainly that this bill would only apply to new builds of buildings, because the research available only applies really to buildings. Specifically, the Pew Charitable Trust research applied to buildings built after 1968. That seems to be addressed. So my only comment really is that within the text of the bill, it would be wonderful for it to be clearly written out that these changes are specifically for new construction and new buildings, and that the existing code that would require the alteration of older buildings already exists, and that older buildings that have a single staircase would also need to adopt some of these strategies, or which strategies they would need to adopt. I think that is the basis of a lot of people's concerns and confusion around this bill. So I just wanted to make that very clear, because of the presentation showing modern buildings and older builds. A lot of residents and a lot of people listening to this bill were confused by that presentation. The other thing that I just wanted to note, I do have a concern about the way that the public is being shared these amendments. So our testimony is based on not having access to the written out amendments, which I'm concerned that is against council rules, because I do believe that should have been distributed before the start of today's meeting. And obviously I am not the person that is following and keeping up with the law and how this is ruled, the rule of law within these chambers. But I do want to flag that as a concern, maybe not in this specific instance, but in the future, that any kind of proposed amendment should be provided to the public before the actual council, not a council meeting, but the committee meeting, which this seems to be against those rules. So I look forward to actually seeing those amendments written out. But those are the only things that I just wanted to raise, other than the fact that it seems, I just want to reiterate something I've said many, many times. There is no clear indication that these changes will help support affordable housing in Baltimore City. I think that is a separate discussion. It does seem like it will reduce the cost to developers, which is, I think for a lot of people, really great. I just think the argument that leaps from that to those costs being translated or those savings being translated to the consumer are not definite and not borne out in any available research. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that the bills that we are voting today, we do have the amendments and they were distributed to the committee members in advance of the hearing. So that's that. We're not voting this bill today, largely because we don't have the amendments to distribute to the members. Emily Havermill. All right, so you should be able to unmute yourself. Why is it a two-step thing? I don't know. I wish maybe we can change a setting in there so we just unmute them. All right, I see you've unmuted. Emily?
Sorry about that. Good morning.
We're
Mr.
sorry, too.
Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Emily Hovermail, and I'm the External Affairs Director at the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership, here today to express our support for City Council Bill 250062. The Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership is a nonprofit organization that expands housing choices for low-income families who have historically been excluded from housing in well-resourced neighborhoods by helping them access and transition successfully to safe, healthy, and economically vibrant communities. Every day, we witness the life-changing impact that access to opportunity housing has on the more than 4,300 families who we serve in the Baltimore Housing Mobility Program. But one of the biggest barriers we face is the lack of affordable housing in those resource-rich neighborhoods. This bill, we think, is a smart, practical step towards changing that. Right now, Baltimore's code requiring 2 stairways for buildings over 3 stories adds significant cost and takes up valuable space, making it harder to build affordable homes, especially on smaller lots. We know the need for affordable housing in Baltimore is urgent. Over half of Baltimore renters are cost burdened, and thousands of families are spending more than half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. This bill helps address that by making it easier to build more homes while making efforts to ensure safety is not compromised. BRHP's support for this bill is about affirming our mission to create pathways to thriving communities for families who've been historically excluded from resource-rich neighborhoods. By amending the stairway rule and allowing smaller apartment buildings to be built, we can unlock more housing options across Baltimore, especially in areas rich with resources and opportunities. For the families we serve, this bill represents a meaningful step towards housing access and thriving futures. This bill opens the door to safe, stable, and affordable homes in neighborhoods where our families can thrive. For these reasons, we urge the committee's support for Bill 250062 to help Baltimore lead the way in equitable housing policy. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Next up, Carson Ward.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. So I just want to first just reiterate Keondra's point, because what I think she was trying to say is that the amendments weren't shared with the public, but I will continue. I just want to also say that we're glad to see amendments were made, even if it took longer than it should have. It seems like you finally understood the logic and the concerns the public has been raising, and I think that's a step forward, but I do still have a few concerns. So my first is that Baltimore is in a crisis. We are at the brink of a housing collapse, and this is no longer just a local issue. International financial institutions are taking notice, and according to Bloomberg, some banks have stopped lending to small business developers in Baltimore altogether, and that's not just a red flag, that's a financial indictment. Now, we've heard from a lot of developers who are testifying in favor of this bill, but frankly, I think that article from Bloomberg speaks more to failures in terms of developers than their credibility. And I think that when you look at developers like Chasen, By the Wood, Dean Harrison, who are scaling back on major projects or have failed to deliver on past promises, it's a track record of failure and it's a warning sign. And it's not just on them, it's also a reflection of the failures of DHCD. There is a lot of dysfunction in our code enforcement and permitting process that has directly contributed to unsafe housing and failed developments across the city. My second concern is that the concerns or the comparisons to New York City are pretty misleading. New York has a significantly stronger building code, better enforcement, and the resources to back them up. And when you look at New York properties, most of them are not wood frame buildings. So we're talking about, apples. We're comparing apples to oranges. And then the third concern is just that there isn't proof that this will create affordable housing. What this proposal does is allow developers to cut costs by lowering building standards. But in a city that's already struggling with unsafe housing and failed oversight, that's not progress, it's a risk. So I don't want to pretend that this is an affordability solution because without real enforceable mechanisms to require affordability, what this bill enables is not equitable housing. It's just cheaper building standards. So what I want to ask is, what will you do to ensure affordability? How can we strengthen the code to be more comparable to New York City? And how can we trust DHCD to manage this when their failures are very well documented? So without clear answers, this bill is not a path to equity. It's just deregulation disguised as reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson, for your comments and questions. Okay, last person we have online, Corey Russell.
Thanks for hearing me, everybody. I'm Corey Russell. I am a resident of Canton in Baltimore, and I'm in favor of the bill. Basically, as an anecdote, all along the Canton waterfront and in Brewer's Hill by the Target, there's these buildings you described today that you showed on a really helpful presentation, I thought, where it's these cookie cutter Lego buildings that look a lot like what DC is now full of, because they had a lot of development and there wasn't an opportunity to make better looking buildings. So I'm in favor of this bill to hopefully get some more mixed typology of housing in the city and improve the architecture here. So thanks for presenting. That's it.
Thank you, Corey. Before we conclude the hearing on this, anything else from any of the committee members? Okay, we're going to take a quick recess so I can run to the restroom, and then we will reconvene and we will be in a voting session. On the three bills that we're going to vote today, for which we've already held and concluded the hearings. And so this will be strictly a voting session for committee member discussion and committee member voting. We are in recess until I come back in just a couple minutes. Okay, committee, we are back from recess. Where's Councilman Blanchard? Great, we are in a voting session now, committee members. We are going to vote three bills here in order of number. It will be bills number 250040, 250064, and 250065. So beginning with 250040, there is an amendment package for this bill. It is 4 pages. It is in your packet. It is 4 pages. It is 4 amendments. To the sponsor of the bill, Councilwoman Middleton, do you want to say anything about these amendments before we take a motion on voting them?
Just, again, I'd like to thank Legislative Reference and the Law Department for really working with us on the details of these 4 amendments. And for me, they're pretty much technical, and just making that agreement to help this be a starting point. I appreciate the support on the amendments.
Great. Would you like to move the amendment?
And I move approval for the 4 amendments. Do we have to do each one separate?
We can do them all together as a package, unless a member asked for specific reason to have them separated out as separate amendments, but I don't see any reason we can't vote them as a set. So the amendments have been moved. Is there any questions or unreadiness or comments about the amendments before we take a vote? Okay, then all in favor will vote by a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Abstention? Great. The committee recommends the amendments. Madam Vice President, would you like to move the bill
I'd
with
like
the
to
amendments?
move the Bill 25-0040, small box establishment.
Great. There's a motion to move the bill and to vote the bill, to recommend the bill favorable with amendments. Are there any questions or comments about that before we take a vote by roll call? Seeing none, Tony, do you want to call the roll?
Chairman Dorsey?
Votes yes.
Chairman Dorsey votes yes. Vice Chair Middleton?
Yes.
Vice Chair votes yes. Councilwoman Porter?
Yes.
Porter, yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Bullock, yes. Councilman Parker?
Yes.
Parker, yes. Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilman Gray, yes. Councilman Blanchard?
Yes. And I'd like to explain my vote. Councilman Blanchard.
Briefly, I just want to, because there was a snag. I am a co-sponsor of the bill on Legistar. I think there was some typo, it didn't show up, but it is on the bill package that I am a co-sponsor of the bill. I am a huge supporter of this. I think it's a wonderful idea. I appreciate both the Council Vice President and Councilwoman Ramos for their leadership on this. I think from both the woman who gave the testimony for the impact on middle neighborhoods, and then also our Main Streets Director who gave the testimony there, it's extremely, this is a very real benefit, and we're going to end up with better main streets and better middle income neighborhoods because of this legislation, and I hope the council continues to look at things like this moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. That is 7 in favor. The bill, 7 out of 7. Congratulations. We will recommend this bill favorable with the amendments to the full council at its next council meeting. Next bill, 250064, zoning, bulk, and yard requirements. We have an amendment from the sponsor in the packet. We also have an amendment from the Planning Commission separate from the packet. And I'm also going to offer one additional verbal amendment for a typo in the bill. Councilman Parker, would you like to offer up your amendment? Oh, sorry, Gray.
Yes, this amendment is
both
on,
of y'all join.
This amendment is on behalf of Councilman Parker and some other members in talking, particularly in the R8 area. And what it does is takes out the by right for houses on like narrow streets and on corners, and anything. It keeps it at it changes it from 40 to 30 feet, and it's conditional use as well.
Great, thank you. Councilman Parker, do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, thank you, Councilperson Gray, for the help in the introduction here. And so the sponsor's been approached, a number of members of the council have been approached by zoning to say, listen, currently there's this conditional use variance or this conditional use for 35-foot heights or 45-foot heights in R8 zones. We always say yes, it happens very rarely. It'd be great if this didn't go off the works over here and we had it just kind of a by right situation. As part of that amendment, which is in the original bill, this amendment, it had a language of when the street widths are 30 feet, above 30 feet, that's when the conditional use was possible. And so then as part of that, removing the conditional use, it's extending it to 40 feet widths, just to say it's going to be by right, it's not going to come with the works of BMCA, but we are going to have it be applicable to streets that are a little bit wider than had been before, because there's no review process. And so absent the review process, just widen the streets a little bit and have it be by right.
Great, thank you. Councilman Gray, would you like to move this amendment? The amendment's been moved by Councilman Gray. Are there any other comments or questions on this amendment before we take a voice vote on it? Okay, then, all in favor of recommending this amendment, approving this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, the committee adopts the amendment. As the chair, I'll bring forth the Planning Commission's amendment. The Planning Commission amendment addresses two typos in the bill where numbers that were being struck from the text of the existing code and replaced with other numbers did not have the brackets placed around them that indicate the striking of those numbers. So this addresses that by striking those numbers that should have been there. So I will move this amendment. Is there any questions or concerns about this amendment? None, then we will take a voice vote. All in favor of adopting the Planning Department's or Planning Commission's amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Great. And then there is another typo that Council Members Gray and Parker noticed that I'm going to offer as a verbal amendment here that I've just reviewed also with our law department staff in advance, so they are very aware of this and can help us translate this to DLR to make sure that it gets drafted properly so that we can recommend it as a committee adopted amendment rather than a second reader floor amendment when it comes to that. So it is on page 4 of the bill. What's that? Thank you. Page 4 of the bill, the table slot for lines 12 and 13 in the 5th column, it says 45 or 60 feet with a footnote number 2. That 2 is erroneous and should be a 3. So it will be on page 4 of the bill in lines 12/13 in column 5. Strike the 2 after 45 or 60 feet and replace it with a 3. And so I move this amendment. Are there any questions or concerns about this amendment before we take a voice vote? Okay, then, all in favor of adopting this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Great. The committee has voted to adopt 3 amendments. Mr. Sponsor, would you care to move the bill favorable as amended? The bill has been moved. Is there any questions or anything before we move the bill as amended? Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Gray, for all your good work on this. The only thing I mentioned this to Mr. Gray while we're sitting here today, and it may be worth, I'm just pointing out not to impact our vote in this moment, but to think about whether there's a floor amendment possibility. I know one of the things that exists in the code as it currently exists is this distinction for minimum lot area between multifamily dwellings and age-restricted multifamily dwellings, where the current code has lower square foot per dwelling units for across the board, well, except in R9 and R10, but in 5, 6, 7, and 8, lower than the current square footage. So, for example, currently in R5, it's 2,500 for multifamily and 1,875. It's designed to give some incentive to age-restricted and allow more age-restricted units. The bill as it currently stands doesn't amend anything thereon related to the minimum lot areas for multifamily. So in the end, we're going to wind up at the moment with higher numbers, higher square foot per dwelling unit in that row of the chart than for multifamily. And so I'm just raising the possibility that those two should be considered as maybe there's some consistency between that ought to be achieved, or maybe there's a policy goal that we want to continue to advance where it's a lower number for age restricted, if that's still a policy goal that makes sense to this council.
Good and smart point. I appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else on this bill before we take a vote?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
No, we're in voting session. This is only for committee members. I'm sorry. We have moved the bill. We've had discussion on it. We will take a voice vote. Tony?
Mr. Dorsey?
Yes.
Mr. Dorsey votes yes. Mrs. Middleton?
Sorry, this is a vote for the bill with the 3 amendments adopted by the committee. I vote yes.
Vice President Middleton?
No.
Vice President Middleton is a no. Councilwoman Porter?
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter is a yes. Councilman Gray? Yes. Councilman Gray is a yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Councilman Bullock is a yes. Councilman Parker?
Yes.
Councilman Parker is a yes. Councilman Blanchard?
Yes.
Councilman Blanchard is a yes. 6 yeses, 1 no.
The bill passes with 3 amendments with 6 voting in the affirmative, 1 against, and will be recommended as favorable by the committee at the next city council meeting. Finally, Council Bill 250065, zoning eliminating off-street parking requirements. There is an amendment from the sponsor for this bill. Councilman Blanchard, would you care to offer your amendment?
Yep, absolutely. So this was brought up by Councilman Ramos as a concern where a new owner was moving into a property and the land use, the new use was I think a dance studio, and so there was more parking available than would have been allowed for the parking maximum. So just to clarify and make it remove any legal ambiguity so that you can grandfather in if you have an excess of parking and you would not need to go out of your way to reduce the amount of parking for a change in the land use. So no, there was a perfectly reasonable amendment there.
Thank you. So shall we move the amendment?
So moved.
Great. We have an amendment from Councilman Blanchard moved. Is there any questions or comments about it before we take a voice vote? All right then, Councilman Blanchard's amendment. All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstention? Great. The committee recommends that the bill be amended with Councilman Blanchard's amendment. Now we have the bill to be voted with the amendment. Councilman Blanchard, would you like to offer that up for a vote?
So moved.
The bill has been offered up for a vote with the amendment. Is there any questions or thoughts before we vote on that? Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our lengthy public hearing and conversation last week, I heard 2 very consistent concerns raised. There may have been others, or my colleagues may have heard different things rise to their attention. One had to do with the loose connection, I think, between the availability of more housing that this bill would allow and potential gains in affordability, which would only be kind of by increasing supply and maybe eventually getting back to the actual rents that people pay for things or the purchase price for them. And so I was mindful of that and think that it's a good question for us to ask. I know when the previous city council approved larger than 20 multifamily units, it was part of an inclusionary housing law, and so there was affordability baked into the legislation that was also removing the parking requirements. And in here, it's just the parking requirements on its own without that kind of direct control over costs that was included in inclusionary housing law. Not that in the end, increased supply might eventually trickle down to renters in the city, but a good amount of that increased supply will benefit the people who are trying to pencil out the projects and the potential profitability of the projects as well. So I just wanted to mention that there's a difference here and that I heard that clearly. I think the other thing to mention, I think the thing we heard the most about was concerns around particular building uses, particular uses, both in residential, but especially in commercial zones, behavioral health, addiction-related items. I just simply note that the sponsor did point out that there may be some other legislation on your handout last week. There may be other legislation, such as that introduced by Councilperson Torrance or by Councilperson Porter, that might help us address some of those concerns. But I do note that at the moment, those are separate pieces of legislation and aren't directly address, no amendments have been proposed to this legislation that would address those concerns. That's fair to say?
That is
Thank you.
correct. Sorry.
Other committee members?
Can I respond to?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll respond to Councilman Parker's both points briefly. So one, related to the affordability, so there's an indirect aspect of increasing the supply of housing, but there's actually, in this case, there's also a very clear direct aspect of the type of housing being built because it doesn't require the additional burden of adding additional parking, right? Both driving up the cost of the housing, but also allowing things physically to fit that wouldn't just be able to physically fit in, right? So there's two ways that it addresses affordability. One is the supply and demand conversation, and the other one is the type of housing that's getting built. So I'll address that. And then, yes, you're correct. We did, regarding residential care facilities specifically, this is something I've heard concern from several members on, fully share the concern about. Long story short, it would be, discriminatory in a legally unacceptable way to have that as a specific use be carved out. And so we did explore that. That was not able to be addressed via that concern.
Thank you. Others? Okay, so we have the bill with an amendment recommended by the committee and a motion to vote to recommend the bill with that amendment favorable to the council. We will take a roll call vote. Tony, take it away.
Mr. Dorsey,
Yes.
Vice President Middleton,
No.
Councilman Bullock. Councilwoman Porter,
Yeah, no, I would like to explain my vote, Tony, please. I'm sorry.
We'll wait until the end to explain your vote?
Sure, it's
Great.
a no.
Councilman Blanchard,
Blanchard.
Yes.
Councilman Gray.
Yes.
Councilman Parker.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 noes.
Great. The bill passes and will be recommended favorable with 5 in the affirmative, 2 against. Councilwoman Porter would like to explain her vote.
Thank you. Just wanted to laud the bill sponsor for all of their hard work on this bill. While I understand the intent of the bill, I think that Councilman Parker, your most recent comments about the distinction between the connection of the original law with how this particular ordinance is framed really kind of pushed me in the opposite direction. And so, Councilman Blanchard, definitely appreciate all your work on this, and I look forward to continuing conversation. But at this time, I just can't move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. That concludes the committee's business for the day. Thank you, Councilman Bullock. You've got to get to the Planning Commission, doing double duty. Appreciate it. Committee's in recess. We will take up the vote on 250062 at the very beginning of our meeting next week at 10 a.m.
Just need your signature